All right, so if you take a look up here again, I'm at nodejs.org, and I just went over to the API. You don't have to go there. It's totally fine. But I want to go through some of the stuff that's in here. The first one that I want to go through is I want to go down and find path. Now, there is some really good documentation in here, just so you know. I mean, if I keep going down, it tells you how you put it in. It gives you examples of how you use it, etc. And what the path variable is necessary for is what you're going to see very quickly here is when you start putting in other folders, they're expected to have certain names, and files in there typically have certain names, and you've got to let the system know where things live, for lack of better words. And that's why you typically use path. All right. So it allows you to find out what your current path is, to change your current path, etc. So what I want to show you here is how we can use that. So what we're going to do, we did come in here and we successfully created our first server. Now I didn't look during the break, and I should have, but I didn't look for that res.render. But what I'd like to do is I'm going to use an external terminal so you can see more of my screen. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally comment this whole thing out that we've done so far. I'm going to comment out every line of it that's in here. And I should be able to have these at the bottom of my page. It shouldn't matter. All right. But we're going to come in and we're going to actually do some stuff first with path. We're going to do some stuff with path, and then we'll go on. We'll do 2 or 3 of them, and then we'll do some more of them tomorrow. Okay. So if I want to use path, I have to start with const path equals require path. I think you already know this, but I'm saying it anyway. You can use single quotes there. You can use double quotes there. Remember, it's JavaScript. It takes either one. If you're more comfortable using double quotes, use double quotes. If you're more comfortable using single quotes, use single quotes. And again, it's convention that you call it path. You don't have to do that. All right. And here we're going to say here, show base file name. What does that mean? I'm going to show it to you right now. We're going to say console.log path dot base name underscore underscore, so there's 2 of those, file name. So one more time. This says console.log, then in parentheses, path.base name, then in another set of parentheses, underscore underscore file name. All right. And I'm going to save this. And again, I'm using an external one in here now, which is totally fine. So let me exit. I should have before, and that's okay. And let me run this again. All right. Server.js, big deal. It's showing us the name of that file. All right. This isn't, believe me, this wasn't meant to be a gee whiz type of thing, but I want to show you different ways that you can get some of this information. Are you with me? All right. So that allows us to get the name of our file. What if we also want the name of the directory in there to see where something lives? All right. So I'm going to come back into here. Where am I? There it is. And I'm going to copy this line. So I've got it in there twice. But this second time, I'm going to put this. Instead of base name, I'm going to put in dir name. So path.dir name underscore underscore file name. Why? Because that should also give me the directory. Okay? It give me the file name, but it should give me basically the path for everything. So it's the same thing we just typed in, but we're replacing base name with dir name. Everybody with me? All right. And if I come back out over here and I bring this back up, you'll notice there it is. C users, JP Scott desktop node practice. So that's the name of my directory. Does that make sense to everybody? And again, the reason that I'm taking the time to show this to you is twofold. All right. First of all, so you get a little bit of practice using some of the node core modules. And second, just so you can see how this stuff works, for lack of better words. All right. All right. I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to copy that again. So I'm going to copy this one again and put it right below it. And now I'm going to say path dot, I'm going to change this to ext name. So I changed this, I changed it from dir name to ext name. Anybody want to take a wild guess what that should give me? The extension. And what's the extension on our server file? There you go. So let's see if indeed, there it is. Now, why is that? I mean, who cares? Because as we get going in here and you're doing things that are more and more complex, what you might want to do is you might want to check the file name's extension. For instance, I might want to say that if I'm expecting an image file, that I want the extension to be .jpg or .jpeg or .gif or .ping, etc. I could check for stuff like that. All right. All right, let's go back. And those were all fine, no problem with any of that stuff. Okay. But, you know, it kind of, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but it was kind of a pain to have to go type all that stuff in. Isn't there an easier way to do it? The answer is yes. So let's take these 3 lines and let's comment out every one of them. Oops. All right. And down below it, let's come in here and let's do another console.log, but now let's say path.parse. Oops, you got to be able to spell here. A-R-S-E. So path.parse. And save. All right. It'll make a lot more sense when you take a look at the output. Parse means break, show me the pieces. All right, when you are parsing something. So I'll come right back to it if you're still typing, but look on the screen. See that? Now I parsed it out. It shows me my root. It shows me the directory name. It shows me the base, which is my file name plus the extension. It shows me just the name of the extension and just the name of the file. And again, that it is basically showing me this stuff, and for lack of better words, it is basically another object, a JSON object. All right. Now, what if I wanted to, I don't know, what if I wanted to I'm not even going to show you that. It's kind of a silly example. All right, that's enough for path for now. And again, if you say, well, I had some questions or something I really didn't get or whatever, then my strong recommendation to you is that you go out and you actually take a look at it on the API page. All right, so that's the first one. Like I said, just showing you some stuff about path. All right, I'm going to back up, and now we're going to look at some of the stuff in the file system. Okay, and what does this allow you to do? Create directories, remove directories, create files, read files, delete files. All right, makes sense? All right. So we're going to come in here and we're going to add a few things. So I'm going to go back into our program here. I've commented out everything that we've done so far. So if I ran it right now, nothing would show because there's nothing there. But I don't really need path anymore. I can leave it in there. It's not going to hurt anything, and maybe we will use it. So I'll leave it in there. But now I want to add the file system, and that usually is brought in as FS. FS, again, for file system. Okay. All right. So first thing I'd like to do is, I think you'd all agree if you look in here, I've got my node modules file, I've got my index.html file, I've got this package lock.json that we haven't even talked about, but we will. I've got my package.json, and I've got a server.js. Would you all agree? We don't have, for example, let's say, because we're going to test this, would you all agree we right now do not have a folder in there called test? Would you agree with that? All right, so let's make one. So I'm going to put a comment here. In fact, I'm just going to, I'll leave all these in here in case I want to go back to anything later, but I'm going to hit enter a few times. So I'm going to come in here and say create folder test. Now, the commands that you use to do this, these file system commands, they're very much like what you use in the Unix or Linux file system. In there, you never call what we're about to create a folder. It's always called a directory. All right, not that that's a big thing, but just so you hear that, okay? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say FS, and we are going to need the path. So if you commented that line out, uncomment it, please. So I'm going to say fs.makedir, which means make a directory, path.join, __ dir name. And what's that? That's our directory name. That's that node practice that we created before, comma, /test. Now we're not done, but that's most of it right there. We're not done. But that should go in and tell us that it wants us to create this test. Now, the thing about this is this can fail. What if I don't have permissions to create that directory? What if there's already a directory by that name? All right. So, I mean, stuff could happen. So you come in here, and after the paren here, we're going to put in this, if, whoops, not a period, a comma. If we wanted to go and add some information, that's an empty JSON object right there, if we wanted to do that. We don't. We could, but we're not going to. And what can happen here? We can have an error. An error is typically abbreviated ERR. Doesn't have to be, but it typically is like that. So I'm going to say here, if there's an error, and there's different ways we could handle this. Typically in here, we just say throw error. So that's checking. If there's an error, throw it. When it throws it, the program will stop because it's throwing an error message. Okay? Now, if it gets down to the line 8 where my cursor is, what we tried to do worked. Okay? So we don't have to do this, but I'm going to do a console.log that just says folder has been created. Like that. You could put any message in there you wanted to put in there. It wouldn't matter. All right? And even though it's not showing it, it's a good idea on line 9 here to put a semicolon on the end. Now, I'm watching literally scores of these things. I probably have watched 30 or 40 of these, and half the people use the semicolons all over the place, and half the people don't use the semicolons. I guess it's just what you're comfortable with. But I'm going to save that. All right. And look on the screen. All I did was save it, and NodeMon restarted. Look, I've got a folder there named test. All right. So what did we tell it? We told it here to basically require the file system module. We said make a directory. Join to the current directory. That's node practice. That's dir name. That's our root directory. Add to that a folder called test. If there's an error, just throw it. Why would we get an error? Again, typically the only reason you get an error is if you didn't have the permission to do that. In fact, let's see what happens if I try this again. All right, I'm going to try to run this again. So let me come in here. All right, and I'm going to stop NodeMon, and I'm going to start it again. See that? That's the error. File already exists. It can't make the directory because the directory's already there. Now that's not good news because notice what it did. It says NodeMon crashed. All right. And it may restart by itself, but typically when you do that, just do another Control-C and it'll start back up again. All right. So I'm going to bring back my npm run dev again. All right. Oops. I better undo that. Now I'm going to comment this out because this is going to keep crashing. Once you created it, it's going to keep crashing. Does that make sense? This would be the kind of thing where you run it, it's a one and done type of thing. All right. And if you say, I don't get it, I believe you do. Every person who's in here, all of us, we've all gone and looked, at least we've gone through the beginning stuff for MySQL. All right. That's like we were in MySQL and we tried to add a record that was already into the database. We'd get an error from the system. All right. So if we were manually putting in our primary key, so let's say we didn't do an auto increment. We didn't do an auto increment. And we put in person with ID of 1. Then we tried to put in another record of ID 1. We'd get an error message. That's exactly what's happening here. All right. So I'm just going to comment that out. All right, now we've got that file. All right, we've got the folder in there. Okay, well, it'd be nice to put something in that folder, wouldn't it? So let's put a file in the folder. All right, so I'm going to say here fs.write file. Notice the capitalization, capital F. All right, so .write file. All right, and I'm going to do another path.join __ dir name /test hello dot hello dot text. Okay, and again, it is possible. So that's going to write the file. And now what it wants to know is, what do you want to put into that file? What do you want to write inside of that file? And I'm just going to put in here, hello node. Again, you can put anything you want. All right, like I said, it really and truly does not matter what you put in there. All right, and I'm going to put in another comma here. Okay, now when I try doing this, this can fail too. Again, for very similar reasons. What if I already had a hello.txt in there? All right. In this case, it would actually probably override it, but it's possible you can have errors in here. All right. It is possible you could have errors in here. So now I can keep going on this line, but I'm kind of running out of room. So I'm going to close that so I can keep writing. Just so you know, I could hit enter right there if I wanted to. I could hit enter right there if I wanted to. You're going to come up and you're going to figure out your own way of doing this that you're comfortable with over time. So I'm going to put in here ERR for an error. And again, this is one of those error functions. So curly brace. All right. Again, if there's an error, I'm just going to throw it like we did before. So throw error and console.log, and I'm going to say we wrote to a file. Making sure I didn't skip anything in my notes here. So I hope this works. We'll see. We wrote to the file. All right, if I did skip anything, believe me, I never would do that on purpose. I screw up enough without trying to. All right. And we'll put down on the bottom here, we'll put another semicolon. All right, I'm going to save and bring this back. Inside of test, look on the screen. I now have hello.txt, which has in it hello node. I realize this isn't stuff where you're going, oh my God, is this fantastic? But we're running through some basic stuff that you're bound to use in a lot of your programs. So let's go back, just in case anybody had any problems with it, let's go back and take a look at everything we just did. So the method we called was write file. The first thing we had to do was we had to tell it where to write it. So we said write it to the current directory /test. All right. We did a join, so it joined together the node practice with the /test. Does that make sense? Then we had to tell it, what do we want to call this file? That was here. Then we told it, what contents do we want in that file? Now, you might say, that seems like a really horse's butt way of doing it. Well, that file could already exist. All right. In fact, watch what happens. I got hello node. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to change this to hello node. How are you? All right, just like that. All right, and again, there's a reason for doing this. So I'm going to save this, no errors, but I want to go and look at that file. It overrode the original one. The original contents that were in there are gone. Now, there's different ways that you can write there as an append file as opposed to what we did. So there's a lot of stuff. I don't want to show you all those because then we're going to be going through, and most of this stuff we're going to use, but we're not going to be like using it every day. I want to show you the stuff that we're going to use quite a bit. All right. Okay. So that's cool. We've got this file. That's all fine. All right. And let's take this one and let's comment this out. Now you know how to create a directory, you know how to create a file, and you know how to write to a file. You know how to do all that stuff. All right. So what we're going to do next is almost the same thing. So I guess we can copy this. It's almost, but it's not. What do I mean? Well, instead of writing to a file, how about if we read the file? All right. And we use read file. We again do a path.join. We again do the dir name. We again do test. We again do hello.txt. All right, but we don't need this. We're not writing to it. So we don't need that. All right, so I can get rid of that. But what we do need to do in here, so I'm going to get rid of this. Try it again. Do you remember in here when we did this? Remember that? That said that the character set we were using was UTF-8, which is like Universal Translation Format. It means we're using Unicode. All right. When we go in here and we put in this, we have to again put in UTF-8 to let it know that it's Unicode we're using. All right. Now, look on the screen, please. This is really, it may not seem like it, but it's important. We have two parameters. We've got a possible error, and we've got the actual data from the file, if it works. So if it's an error, the read didn't work. Otherwise, it's going to show us the contents. Does that make sense? Since we've got two parameters, You need to put in the parentheses now. When there's only one parameter, you don't need to put in the parentheses, but since we have two, you must put in the parentheses. You don't have any choice. And the only thing we have to change is this. Console log data. So in English, let's look at all of this. This is saying, all right, I lost my word read in there. It was in there. So what this is saying is we want to read a file. That file is at dir name, which is node practice /test. So it's this one right here, hello.txt. It's in a UTF-8 format. If it doesn't work, we're going to throw the error. If it does work, out on our console, you should show the contents of the file. So I'm going to save this, and when I go to my screen over here, it should say there now, hello node, how you doing? And there, or how are you? And there it is. All right. All right. That's a couple things for the file system. All right. And again, like I said, this is all stuff you are potentially going to be using in one or more of your programs. So we looked at, all right, we first looked at the path module, then we looked at the file system module. All right. Let's look at another one. Even if we just stop after this, that's fine. We're going to look at the operating system module. So OS equals require OS. You have to add that because we're about to do stuff with our operating system. All right. And I'm going to just do it right here. All right. And I'm going to say show platform. If you say, I don't know what that means, you're going to know in 30 seconds. Why? Because you say console.log os.platform. And that's a call to a module. Or a call to a method, I should say. What did that do? Again, easiest to show you. It says Win32. Even though it's a 64-bit machine, it says that. For instance, if you're running on a Macintosh machine or an Apple machine, it says Darwin. All right. They've all got certain things that they say. I don't know what they are exactly and why they are, but it's just that's the way it is. So this allows us to get information from, literally, from our operating system. Okay? So there's other stuff that we could do, just so you know. All right? And I want to show you a little bit of that stuff. And I'm not a hardware guy. So if you said, what does this mean? What is this? I don't know what a lot of it means. You go and look in the documentation and you can find it. But I'm going to put in here, try it again, console.log os dot, I think this is the one I want, but we're going to find out. And it's not OOS, it's OS. Okay, and I'm going to save it and take a look in here, and it didn't like something. It's because the first time I ran it, it's OS dot, and I put OS comma. Dot. All right, CPUS. What is that saying? It's saying, give me information about the CPUs, the central processing units on the machine. All right. So let me stop this and run it again. And you can see it actually worked. There's some information. All right. Now, are you going to use that? Probably not. But again, the operating system could be important because maybe you want to do something different if the person is running a Windows machine versus a non-Windows machine, as an example. There's other stuff I've got it. We can check it, the amount of memory you have, the amount of memory that's being used, etc. And it's not that big a thing. All right, but these are just some of the stuff that's in there. All right, just one or two more. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say this. You've already seen this, but I'm going to change the CPUs to Homedir, Homedir, and save. Anybody want to take a wild guess over what that's going to do? Show us our home directory. All right. I think we have time. We can do one more. And that is, let's come in here up to the top again, and let's bring in URL. As we get going in here, we're going to do this tomorrow, just so you know, but as we get going in here, what's going to happen is you're going to have, these are all core modules. There's a bunch of other modules we'll start adding tomorrow from NPM, the Node Package Manager. And then we'll eventually build our own modules and add them. Some people say, and you'll see this online, hey, at the top, put in all your core modules, then put in all of the NPM modules, then put in your modules. See what I'm saying? But actually the order doesn't matter a lick. But if you want to have some semblance of order to your program, you can do that. Now, I mean, if I wanted to go really nuts here, I could alphabetize these things, but come on, you know, you reach a certain point where that's a little bit ridiculous to do that, but we could. All right. All right, let's see. I'm gonna make something up here just so you know. So I'm gonna say const my URL equal new URL http colons, let's use Rankin, https://rankin.edu. All right, doesn't matter if you have a blank space where I just put one, but so can you tell by looking at it, I'm instantiating a new object. I'm using the new keyword. So I'm telling it to create a new object of type URL and call it my URL. All right. So let's look at some of the stuff we can look at from here. So console.log my URL.href, console.log my URL. It's going to look the same, but just there's two ways of writing this. I think it's going to look the same both ways. Okay. I'll leave that up there for a second. All right, I'm going to save, and I'm going to go take a look at it. And what didn't it like? My URL is...
Your capitalization is a bit...
You are right. So let's get it right. There.
We got in the my URL const, the URL there is uppercase, but the fourth one, you see that?
This one?
There's this new URL that should probably be lowercase, or...
No, that should be lowercase, or uppercase rather. That's the name of the class. So let's see if that fixed it. So there it is. But it didn't print much out, so let's see if I make sure I saved it. I'll save. Oh, that was there it is right there. Okay, the other one was the things we printed earlier. I could just comment those out. All right, there actually is a difference between these. The difference is with the first one, if you have parameters in, remember that query string we talked about? We don't have to get into that now. It's not that important with what we're doing. But I'm going to add another one in here. First I'm going to comment out these two lines because we don't need these. All right. And we really only, since it's printing out the same thing, we only need one of them. All right. Whoops. It should be console. I mean, we could print it out twice. It doesn't hurt anything, but so I'm going to put in here console.log my URL.host. All right. And when I look at it, notice what it pulled out. All right. And that is the host, rankin.edu. All right. And again, there's plenty of ways that we can write this. Okay. For instance, instead of host, what if I put in here host name? All right. And whoop, that is not a capital N. All right. So you can see the difference between them. All right. Again, I repeated a lot of this stuff, so I don't want to say it. That's enough for right now. All right, it's 3:36. And it's a lot to throw at you. I understand that. All right. And you might even think, yeah, I don't even get most of it. When we write our first few applications in here, we're going to be writing them together line by line. All right. And then we're gonna write 2 or 3 of these. Then we're going to write one that's going to be fairly extensive as a class. When we do this, when we get done, everyone should work. But I'm going to say now, I want you to make it your own. So that means that you're going to go back and change colors and fonts and add CSS, because what I'm going to make is going to be ugly as hell, because I want yours to be yours. Does that make sense? I want you to create things that you want to put out on your portfolio that are uniquely yours. All right. Okay, so it's 3:37. All right. Just finish up what you're doing, 8 more minutes, and then we can all take off. I'm going to save this because I'm going to use the same file tomorrow when we start up. So tomorrow we'll do the same thing. I'll give you till about 1:45 to sit and keep working on this. All right. Like I said, feel free. He didn't say anything, so feel free if you do want to try to contact Gabriel, to contact him. I mean, it's your call, whatever you think